I think the most important thing the radical women's liberation movement did was its work on the 1970 abortion referendum.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
It began, it's such a wonderful story. Clara Fraser, bless her sectarian little heart. Clara worked for Seattle Opportunities, SOIC, Seattle Opportunities Industrial Commission. And she had read a little article in the paper that the state legislature was thinking of passing this House resolution, which was to liberalize abortion laws. And what had happened was there were a group of, the movement to reform abortion really came about twofold. One is doctors, social workers, psychiatrists, and sort of not really even now types, but were just so upset about the carnage from illegal abortion that they wanted to quietly, without sort of letting anybody know, see if they could sneak abortion reform through legislatures and so forth. And that's what happened in Washington State. There was a woman named Marilyn Ward who was a Republican lobbyist. And this is in the days when, you know, well, she was a Dan Evans type Republican. And so she persuaded these legislators to pass this bill. And there was a group called the Committee for Abortion Reform, and there were these doctors, and the early NARAL was there. And Clara reads about it, and she goes to her boss, and she says, I think our clients should lobby at this hearing, because if we can legalize abortion, it means girls are not going to get pregnant, they're going to stay in school, they're going to get the training. This is just right up our sleeve. And of course, Clara is an organizer. So the boss doesn't know what he's doing. He says, fine, gives Clara the money. So Clara organizes all these clients, all of whom are black women, and they show up, a couple hundred of them, with picket signs, and I call it lobbying. It's just creative lobbying. And it makes the headlines. I mean, it was a big deal. And Jill Severin wrote the most brilliant piece about it, because she writes, she says, there's no question about it, that these white legislators, I don't know what Olympia is like now, but boy, going to Olympia was something else then. I mean, they probably were terrified seeing black people, you know, thinking that black people, you know, how dare they talk to me? I never talked to one before, and so forth. And it brought it to the front pages. And so then we had an abortion study group, and so there was going to be another big demonstration, and this was about 1,500 of us. And it was just really exciting. It was just wonderful, because there was a bill stuck in committee, and we all showed up, and we wouldn't leave. And we went into all their offices, chanting, singing, and it got the bill out of committee. But to get things passed takes time and patience. And so we started working with the Committee for Abortion Reform, our women's liberation group, and we were the ones that insisted and convinced them to have a referendum and not just do legislative action. We said a referendum, and we had done our research, and we had found out that 1 in 4 women in Washington State had had an abortion. And we have a pamphlet. I have it in my files. And that there was I mean, the Republican governor was for it. I mean, people were for it. And for me, what was very interesting is in those days you really could go door-to-door canvassing. I mean, today, somebody knocks on my door, I'm not going to answer it. You probably wouldn't either. And we were able to go door-to-door. I mean, I remember I spoke for the Seattle Symphony or something like that about abortion reform. Some of the members of our group were invited to speak to veterans of foreign wars. So there really was real civic engagement in this discussion. And again, the issue of race is very interesting, because one aspect of black nationalism was the belief, one aspect, or one point of view, was that black women should have babies for the revolution, and that birth control and abortion, excuse me, was genocide. And no one would take the Black Panthers on this except Clara and Jill. And they went on the black radio station, I forget what it was called. The radical radio station was called KRAB, but there was a black radio station, and they went on that and spoke. there were two black newspapers at the time. One was called The Median and one was called The Fact. And they had anti-abortion propaganda. And this African-American doctor answered them. But for the most part, and our women's and our abortion group, our abortion rights group, organized a teach-in at a high school on abortion. And we had Erica Gottfried, who now is at the Tamament Library, she was a teenage member of our women's group. And she spoke along with two other black women on abortion. And then the weekend before Election Day, the anti-abortionists then in Washington State were not particularly sophisticated. They called themselves the Voice for the Unborn. And they had this big van that they drove around which had pickled fetuses, but they weren't human fetuses. And it became a joke. I mean, they came to the campus and they were showing people pickled fetuses, and I mean, it really was a joke, so that backfired. Then they created these billboards, and the billboards are really big, and the first one was a hand, and in it was a little fetus, and it said, "Let him live." And the first little fetus was a boy, you could tell, because you could see the genitalia. So some of their own members said, "This is disgusting, blah, 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 take the penis out." But Nancy Stokely, who's still here in Seattle, and she was active in the People's Health Movement, she and Kathy Naughton went up on one of the signs. It was a hand, and there was a little fetus, and it said, "Let him live." And in red ink, they crossed out the him and wrote in her. It was brilliant propaganda for us. And unfortunately, the anti-abortion movement is much more sophisticated, but they weren't then. And so they had a big rally the Saturday before the election. And all the women's groups came together to do a counter rally. And again, they weren't very good. They met at Westlake Mall. And they start singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands," and so we would shout back, "That's the problem." I mean, that's what I mean by things being fun. And one of the women's groups, which was called Fan Chen, showed up as witches, and they were banging drums, and they had makeup. I mean, it was really terrific. And then they started chasing us, and a bunch of them got Clara Fraser and me, and they were hitting us over the heads with their picket signs. And one of them asked us if we believed in God, and Clara and I both went, "No, we're atheists." They just sort of wanted to run away. And the other funny thing about their propaganda was their signs went, "Kill the bill, not me." But as they marched down whatever it was, all you see is like 200 school children with signs that sort of like, "Kill, kill, kill." So, I mean, they just were not particularly effective. And the referendum won overwhelmingly. I mean, obviously, King and Pierce County did it. East of the mountains, not as strong. And the only area that did not go for Proposition 20 was the Central District. We lost the black vote on that one.